Hi there, this is Sean, the Honest Book Reviewer, with another book review. In this video, we're discussing One Rainy Night. It's another horror novel by author Richard Laymon. I have reviewed another book by Richard Laymon, In the Dark. If you want to see that video, why not check it out on my channel? And while you're there, why not subscribe? Now, to this book. This is the book from my shelf. I think this particular version was published in the early 90s, so the covers may seem a little bit dated, but they're still, quite engaging when you see them on the shelf. As I mentioned, this novel is in the horror genre, and it's in a particular subgenre of horror called splatterpunk. I didn't realise when I first read Richard Laymon many years ago that that's what this genre was called, that he wrote many of his novels in. I'm finding more about splatterpunk as I go along, but let's investigate the book more. The plot of this novel is quite simple. It opens up with a town kind of recovering from the shock murder of a teenager. This teenager was in high school, and after a high school dance, he was murdered. And he was not just murdered, but he was burnt as well. And that kind of sets the scene for some parts of this novel. But the main plot just involves rain. So this one town called Bixby, one night it starts to rain. And it's not just ordinary rain. The rain's black, and it's got a consistency of almost like oil or something sticky like molasses. Because when it rains on people, it tends to coat them. So their hair gets matted with the rain, their faces and their skin and their clothes just get drenched with the rain, and it sticks to them like molasses. When it does rain on them, they go a bit crazy and they start to try to kill either each other or people who are dry, and they call them the dry ones. That's what the people who get rained on think of them as, the dry ones. Let's get the dry ones. So I found that a bit childish, just that notion of the dry ones. Certain people are not rained on in this novel, and they're seeing this action or the crazy things happening by the people who are rained on. So they're trying their hardest to survive, fight off the people who are crazy and just survive the rain and the people. And that's what this novel's about. So it's pretty basic, and I think that there are many either novels or other things that I've seen or read with the same sort of idea about people going crazy from being rained on or some substance that's going on them. So it's not an original idea in this novel at all. The plot itself, other than that, is pretty ordinary. Much of the story centers around a guy called Trev, who's a police officer, and that's how he calls himself, Trev, and people call him Trev as well in the novel. He's trying to find a woman called Maureen that he's got the hots for. So they're not going out at all. They're just friends, but he wants to rescue her. So he's on the hunt for her to try to find her in this town where rain's still falling. And if you get wet, you turn crazy. And just about the events that he sees along the way, people trying to attack him, whether he has to kill them or not. He creates a costume out of garbage bags and other things to keep himself free from the rain. So that's, I guess, quite inventive a bit in the novel, quite resourceful for a character, but there's nothing that kind of stands out as remarkable in that plot line in this book. The other main plot line revolves around a bunch of teenagers, I think 3 boys and 2 girls mainly. One of the boys got dumped recently by his girlfriend, and he wants her back. And we do know in this novel that the 3 boys killed the other teenage boy, and haven't been caught yet. No one knows. The boys are described as bad boys, and the author goes out of his way to tell us that, just with the way they talk, the way they act. I mean, they've even got Harley Davidsons. I mean, what teenagers have Harley Davidsons? I don't know, but that's what they have in this novel. So they're also in this book and have a main plot line in this book, because Maureen, the woman that Trev's trying to save, is also working at her father's restaurant, and she's delivering pizza to these teenagers. She gets wet from the rain and goes crazy and tries to kill one of them, and they basically abduct her and keep her captive, and things happen as well with these teenagers and Maureen. I won't go into detail because some of the scenes are just unnecessary and don't add anything to the plot at all. They're just there for the splatterpunk effect. Even though Richard Laymon wrote it, I think, to be quite provocative and quite impactful, I find it a bit unbelievable just because of the things the teenagers do. There's a third main storyline. There's a young girl babysitting, and this young girl is quite resourceful and one of the main characters in this novel, I think, that is well-rounded, more well-created, and so is the girl she's babysitting. So both of them are really good characters, and I'll discuss them more in characters, but I found their part of the novel, their storyline, much better than any other character storyline in this novel. They are a lot more believable, and the things that happen to them are more believable as well. And I found that Jane and the girl she's babysitting, two of the best characters in this novel. The ending of this novel, just, again, I mean, it's I guess for the novel's sake, it's a worthwhile ending, but I just think it's a bit of a stupid ending, to be honest. There are other things in this novel that just don't make sense to me as well. So people who get rained on turn crazy, but if you get some of that rain put on your skin afterwards, if you're brushing against somebody or someone attacks you and you get that rain on you, you don't turn crazy. That seemed a bit odd to me as well. The second thing that seemed odd to me was that some of the people who do get rained on can control their thoughts and actions. They can not kill if they don't want to. Some seem to be just crazy and kill anybody in their path. I thought that a bit strange as well, because it would seem to be the main characters who were controlling their actions if they got rained on, and other characters couldn't. So I didn't understand those two things. So most of the characters in this novel were just one-dimensional. There was no character development, no desire, it seemed, by the author to even create well-rounded characters in this novel. The novel was just about horror and the impact of certain scenes. That's what it was about. And the characters were just there to fill a gap when they needed to. But I'll discuss a few of the characters now. The first character I'll discuss is Jane. Now, Jane is the babysitter that I mentioned earlier in the plot section. She is probably the most well-defined character in this novel, the most well-developed. And the scenes with her and the young girl Cara that she's babysitting, they're really good scenes. And Jane is really resourceful, really brave, really strong. The things she does is believable. The scenes she's written in aren't over the top, and she doesn't do over the top or crazy things. She does believable things of a, I guess, mid to late teenage girl who's in a situation that's out of her control. And I think the author did a good job on this, and they're some of the few moments in this novel that I thought were written well. Cara is the young girl that Jane's babysitting, and I thought Cara was a really good character. Even though the author falls into that familiar trap of writing a child with, I guess, more knowledge and a bit more above her years, it works in this novel because the Cara character is just a bit of a goofball sometimes, but also very witty, and you get the feeling that she's one of those kids that picks up on things that adults do quite quickly and repeats things like a parrot that her parents say. And I found that okay in this novel for this character. It was very believable, and her scenes with Jane are the best in the novel. I'll mention Trev as a character just because a lot of the novel centres around him and his hunt for Maureen to try to save her, and then his actions to try to stop the rain from falling towards the end of the novel. For some of this novel, he's okay. He does have a little bit of character development. Not as much as Jane and Cara, but some is there. But that's only for part of the novel. Then for maybe the last half of the novel, it just goes off into crazy land for Trev. And the author just has him doing stupid things, I think, crazy things. That's a shame because the character had potential to be a lot more. I just think the author's plot idea was okay, but the way the author wrote the novel and wrote some of the characters was just really below average, to be honest. And the novel ended with this character doing something that was quite unbelievable, and I just didn't get engaged in that ending and these characters towards the end. Jane and Cara I found fully engaging and believable. So they're the standouts for me. Overall, I found this novel to be below average. I think I bought and read a lot of Richard Laymon novels when I was really into horror. I still am into horror, but maybe a different type of horror than I was before. But I haven't read this novel for quite some time. I don't think I'll read it again. So I'm glad I reread it now, but I don't think I'll reread it again in the future. I rate this a 2 out of 5. The plot idea itself was okay. It wasn't unique, wasn't new. Some of the characters were good. It's just that there's too many scenes, I think, that Richard Laymon has put in to try to meet the requirements for his splatterpunk subgenre and try to meet the requirements that maybe people who like splatterpunk want in their novels. I just think that, again, in this novel, Richard Laymon has just put too many scenes in that aren't related to the main plot. They don't make sense to the main plot, and they're not necessary. I'm hoping that when I read future novels of Richard Laymon, or reread them as it is, that I'll find that there aren't as many of those type of scenes in the novels, and that I get some novels from him that are above average and are really good reads. If you're interested in reviews on horror novels, I will be doing reviews from other authors as well, including Stephen King and Dean Koontz. Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out. Also, check out the horror playlist on my channel. You'll find it on the screen now.